Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meet civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Boerne ISD trustee and owner of the Boerne Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Boerne City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. This is Ceasefire, brought to you by the Boerne Bookshop. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And today our topic is going to be, when is it time to let go?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I don't let go of anything. I've got closets full of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got, our head is like a giant closet of memories, some of them that are not very good, and we can't seem to let go of those and walk away from them and give ourselves a clean slate.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of things that we hang on to and to our detriment. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about some of those today, but I'd like to start on the political side. So conservatives are often defined by their
conserving
or hanging on to traditions, right? Yeah. And so that's the sort of the general rule, not necessarily the specific rule, but kind of a general rule, right? We're defined by our traditions. And we do have some, and sometimes it's difficult to let go, and certainly there is some conservative ideas from 100 years ago that we don't share today or use today. But it's not just conservatives, because liberals have traditions too that they hang on to, sometimes to their detriment. And I think we can talk about some of those maybe as a launch point to some of the things that we held on to as a belief, and some of this might be uncomfortable, but let's talk about slavery, for example. It's been in practice for thousands of years, right? Yeah. And most of us common sense people recognize that is a terrible thing, right? But it was a tradition. Right. In a sense, it was I
think there are traditions built around it, but I think it was an economic situation just fundamentally.
Right.
So I would quibble a little bit with that, but I see where you're going on this.
Yeah. Well, okay, I could probably pick a better example, but that would require thinking. And I'm going to stick with my original thought.
There you go.
No, but the idea is that it's in our Constitution, right? The idea of slavery is there from the beginning, but we got smarter. We said that's not right, and we moved away from that. And there are many other examples that if I was quick on my feet, I could come up with, right? That of ideas, political ideas, or religious ideas, or emotional ideas that we hang on to that don't necessarily help us. They stifle our creativity. They keep us from growing or prospering in business, for example. You might have heard the phrase, well, this is how we do it, right? And I mean, I think everybody's familiar with that phrase. And the minute that gets thrown out there, it's somebody saying, there's no more argument.
Right.
This is the way it's done. I mean, how many people have you known in your lifetime ask for help, but then say, but this is the way I want you to do it?
Yeah.
And they keep you from doing it in a way that might be more efficient. And I bring this up because we're doing it in Boerne, we're doing it in Texas, we're doing it in the United States, but
we do it everywhere.
We do it everywhere, right? But in our own community, sometimes we get locked into an idea of what Boerne is, for example. That's not Boerne. No, that's not how we do things in Boerne.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and maybe it's not. We're certainly not doing things the way they did in Boerne in 1880, right? And that's probably a good thing. So at what point do you let go?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that applies in a lot of areas. And one that just sort of popped into my head now is we have a legal system that's based on precedent. So some judge 50 years ago decides that this is the way something's done or something is ruled on. Judges today and lawyers today assume that has to be followed. And so everything's done by precedent. And that's always bothered me because it tells me two things. It tells me, one, the new judge, the current judge, doesn't think that they're smart enough to make their own decision on how this law should be applied. And the lawyers that use them don't think that they're smart enough to convince somebody of their point of view on a particular law. So they have to reach back and use some other lawyer's argument. And so this using precedent in laws has always bothered me. I'm much more of a textualist, or whatever they call it, when somebody wants to read the law and follow it the way it's written. And the precedent stuff has always bothered me. Yeah. And I think that's something that we could let go.
There was a great movie that came out, oh gosh, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, called Hidden Figures. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was about some women, some black women that started working for NASA that were amazing with math. But because of stereotypes that we had at that time, they were confined to certain roles. And there was a scene in the movie where one of them would go to the restroom and she'd come back, and it was an hour later, and she was taken a task by her boss, and she had to explain to him, well, the only restroom for colored women, at NASA was a half hour away, and she had to walk there. And that is a great example of hanging on to something, this belief that, well, those people over there are subordinate, right? And yet those women were absolutely essential to send men into space. Right. Yeah. And yet they were relegated to a role. And that is what I think about when I think about, when I thought about this topic, this idea of not letting go. This is the way it's always been. Right. And so we take this opportunity to grow, and we say, I don't want any part of that because that doesn't work with our tradition.
Yeah. How would you define the difference between this is how we've always done things and traditions? Because I think there must be a subtle difference between the two, and that traditions have some value in and of themselves, but how we have always done things doesn't really have any internal value. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, so, I do.
I think it's important in the context of this conversation that we look at that distinction and decide if there's something that's going on. Is that just the way we've always done things, or is there a tradition there that means something?
Right.
I think a lot of these things are that's just the way we've done things, and they aren't meaningful traditions, honestly.
Yeah. Last week's show, when we were talking about St. Valentine's Day, we were talking about a tradition that has now kind of been lost in commercialization. But I think it's a tradition that still has value, because if you take the time to stop and think about why you do that, you can find something important and something of value in that tradition. Right? It can be that annual reminder of the importance of love and sacrifice and giving. Right? The danger is that it becomes like so many other holidays, especially that string of holidays from the fall through the winter, where you're just kind of going through the motions, pull out the orange and black stuff and hand out the candy. And now let's eat the yam and the turkey, and and then you go into Christmas and you put up the tree, and you're just going through motions.
But I think all holidays have that. They have their sort of commercial aspect, the shallow aspect, but they all have a deeper aspect. And I think a lot of people do look at the deeper aspect, maybe not as much as they should, but I think most people try to think about the deeper aspect.
And I think when you hear people complain about the commercialization of Christmas, what they're crying out for is the loss of that thinking, that loss of that poignancy, that the importance of that, right? Yeah. And I think that's the difference here, is that we sometimes forget why we do things, and we don't take that time to pause and ask ourselves, okay, we've been doing this for so long, why are we doing this? Is it still relevant? Does it still make sense? Is it time to do something else?
Or is there a valid reason underneath all this? Show?
Like taking commercial breaks. Yeah. Why do we do that?
I'm not sure, but we are going to take a commercial break. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. We'll be right back. Boerne has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Boerne Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Boerne Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Boerne Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Boerne at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Boerne Bookshop. Welcome back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and we just wrapped up our commercial tradition, and but I'm not sure if it's a tradition or if it's just something we always do.
Yeah. Well, I think we traditionally do it halfway through the show.
We do, generally, yeah. I've got some things that I think it's time to let go of.
Okay.
Maybe those old computers and TVs that I've got sitting around the house that I can't figure out how to get rid of, and I want to get rid of them, and I don't know how. Maybe you can help me with that. We all need help letting go sometime.
Yeah. Well, I've got some of those things too. I was just dealing with this a couple months ago. I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of photos from back in the days when we used to have to buy film for our cameras.
Yeah, I got those too, yeah.
I got stuff that goes all the way back to, high school when I got my first camera. And then I've got photos after my mom died. My dad did this giant purge of everything. And so I've got photos of family stuff, and his photos going all the way back to his childhood, right? And there's part of me that says, okay, well, I don't think my kids are ever really going to look at these photos. Yeah. And I should just go ahead and let go.
Well, I'm going to introduce you to a word called Döstadning, and I probably butchered that.
Okay.
But it's a Swedish word for death cleaning. And basically it means going through your stuff and separating what you want your family to keep when you pass away and what they need to get rid of. So you don't necessarily get rid of everything, but you at least tell them, okay, this is not important, but this is important. This was your great-great-great-grandfather's mug, but this cup over here was just my sippy cup yesterday.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting concept. There's books and shows about it and stuff like that. But it's about trying to clear out the cobwebs in your life so that what you do leave behind is meaningful and relevant to your offspring.
What's interesting about what you just said, and you gave an example about, well, this mug is important because this was your great-great-grandfather's, right? Mm-hmm. That's a person's perspective of what's important, not necessarily the great-great-grandchild's perspective, right? Yeah. And that's like, so going back to the photos, I value them. I say I value them, but I don't value them enough to do something with them, right? To scan them in or do anything. And I question whether or not my children will find value in them. And I think this is one of the problems that I'm trying to get to with the show, is that it's our own sense of value, our own sense of tradition, our own sense of what we think is important that we're trying to impose on other people. So when we say, for example, that's not Texan. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We're projecting our own values and our own definition of what is Texan and what Texan should be. And we're inhibiting the growth of what Texas really is. Right.
And can become.
And can become. Yeah. And I've got some phrases that I want to read off, and this will be familiar to anybody that's, if you've lived more than 10 years, you're going to be familiar with any of these. We've always done it this way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's not in the budget. We've tried that before. Let's not reinvent the wheel. It's too late to change course now. That's above your pay grade, or that's above my pay grade. Don't rock the boat. Not good enough. Can't do this. Better safe than sorry. Good things come to those who wait. A lot of those seem harmless, but if you get to the root of them, it's actually, and this goes back to that book that you talked about, last year sometime, one of our shows. I can't remember the author's name, Carol something or another, the Mindset book.
Dweck. Carol Dweck, the Mindset.
Okay, Mindset. Yeah. I think that was the name of the book, right? Yeah. So it's just a self-imposed prison that we either put on ourselves or we put on other people for the sake of tradition in some cases, in other cases, just these hardcore beliefs that we're unwilling to let go of.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from not wanting to think about it. And I think this goes back to the legal issue of precedent, is that people don't want to have to justify why something's worthwhile, or why action's worthwhile, or a way of doing things is worthwhile. We've done it before, so I don't have to evaluate it again. I don't have to judge it again and make a decision on whether it's worthwhile again. Right. And so I think it's sort of a shortcut to decision making, just saying, okay, we've done it, it's a routine, we're going to stick with it, and I don't want to think about it anymore. And some of that comes from a fear of change, but a lot of it I think just comes from mental laziness, not wanting to go through that process of evaluating whether something's worthwhile again.
That's interesting. I hadn't really considered that. I mean, because I think that's true. It's not always an unwillingness to change. Sometimes it's just, oh gosh, don't burden me with work.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
That's true.
Exactly.
That's a great point. When I was on city council, there was an individual that came up to me and to complain about the city's expenditure on sidewalks, because every year they would build a little money into the budget to provide sidewalks across the community. Right. And if you were here in Boerne, 20, 30 years ago, you'll remember that a lot of the streets did not have sidewalks in them. And this individual said to me, well, I don't know why we're spending so much money on sidewalks, and that's their primary concern, and that's fine. So their complaint wasn't necessarily, anti-sidewalk. It's just anti-spend. I don't want to spend money. But the argument was, well, we didn't have them when I was growing up here as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, but
how's that relevant?
Yeah, but that was, and that was okay. Well, when you were a kid, there were maybe 4,000 people in the community.
And 3 cars.
And well, horse and buggies. Okay. But it doesn't take into account that the city has grown and there are a lot more cars on the road. And we have the need to put people on foot and get them from point A to point B. Because some people don't do it just recreationally. They do it out of necessity. I see this every day when I go home, and I'm going up 87 to get into Regent Park, and I see people walking from that apartment complex up on the hill, coming down a roadway without sidewalks to get to, I saw a person the other day trying to get to work at Tractor Supply from those apartments, and they don't have sidewalks. And it's like, well, you may not see a need, but there is a need, right? But we're just going to shut that down and say, well, I didn't have them when I was a kid. Yeah. Well, you probably didn't have toilet paper either. Are you willing to get rid of that now?
And part of that also is, as a prosperous society grows, we want to improve things. We want to have better roads. We want to have better buildings and cars and our lives better and bigger homes and stuff. And for a community, the improvements generally, in most people's opinion, would be, you move on to sidewalks at some point. So the growth and the prosperity also that indicates that, okay, now it's time for this community to start thinking about sidewalks if it wants them.
Right. Have you ever heard the phrase, a woman's place is in the kitchen?
I would never admit to hearing that.
Yes, you probably have better friends than I do. No, but so this goes to, I think, to the heart of what I'm talking about. That was a common phrase, and it really not that long ago. Yeah, and that right there just stifles any kind of creativity, any kind of exception to the rule. It just shuts down a conversation immediately. Yeah. And there's a danger in that. And look, I do it too. I mean, I don't say that, but let me be clear. I never say that. Actually, I'm probably in the kitchen more than Kat is, but we all do it in different ways and we don't realize it. And that's why I was reading some of those phrases earlier, because these are common phrases that we all say, and we are limiting ourselves. And it's dangerous, in some ways.
I agree. Now, sometimes it is nice to keep traditions on, but I think the key is to reevaluate them. And that gets back to your conversation about the holidays and stuff, and the deeper level or the shallow level and whatnot. And think about, is this holiday relevant at a deep level? It's fun at the shallow level, but is it relevant at a deeper level for me? Yeah. And if not, or that activity is not relevant at a deeper level, then time for it to maybe go.
So here's something, a tradition in Boerne, and I'll get tarred and feathered for bringing this up, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because when I was on council, we had a discussion about the noon siren. Right? Everybody loves the noon siren. Yeah, all right, you can't talk about that, right?
But you can. You're talking about it here.
Yeah. Well, it costs money to operate that siren, and it was outmoded. It was difficult to find parts for. But at the point that a conversation started about, well, we don't really need this anymore. This is left over from the Cold War era. We're not in the Cold War anymore. We don't need this. Some folks said, hey, no, that's Boerne. That's always been Boerne. We've always had the noon siren, which is not true because there was a Boerne that existed without a noon siren, right?
Yeah.
And there was a time when there wasn't a Boerne. So it's not like this was from the dawn of time, but for some people, that was part of Boerne's identity.
Yeah.
We still have the noon siren, but what most people don't know is that it's not in its original location. It got moved when City Hall moved, and it's not even a real siren anymore. It's
No.
It's a reproduced sound.
So.
Yeah, no, it's artificial noon siren.
Yeah.
Now, do not mistake what I'm saying right now for a rant against the noon siren. That's not what that is. If you love it, that's fine. But do know that you don't have the original anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a true siren. And if you were one of those advocates to keep the noon siren, what exactly were you fighting for?
Okay. I was not in the fight.
No.
But I do like the noon siren.
You do?
I do.
Yeah.
Now, the cost issue, okay, I don't know how much it costs to run that, but I do like it because I do think it does. It's one of those little idiosyncratic things that makes Boerne a little bit different from other places. And I like things like that.
Yeah.
You know, like our main street has no national stores. It's kind of cool, you know. And the noon siren just sort of marks us as a little bit different. People come in and say, "What's that?" And so we tell them. And I like it. Now, I don't know how much it costs, so if there was some big cost to it, I'd say no. But
no, there's not.
So I don't see a problem with keeping it, and I think it does add a little bit of a unique flair to Boerne. So I do like it.
Yeah. I just want to state for the record, I don't have a problem with it either. But that takes me, what your comment there takes me into another thought. What exactly is unique? Because that a lot of people talk about that, about, oh, we're losing our charm or we're losing our uniqueness. Is our uniqueness based on that idiosyncratic siren, or is it something else? And I've always pointed to the people, the attitude of the people, the warmth that you feel, the friendliness. When we talk about a siren, we're talking about something mechanical, something that has no spirit in it. And sometimes I think that we put more emphasis on those things and less on the real important things, which is the value of the people that are in the community.
Yeah, that's a good point. But the siren is an expression of some of the people because some of the people like it.
Yeah.
And so it expresses that there's some people here that like noon sirens.
Yeah.
Just like different signs we have about town, different parks we have about town that people maintain are an expression that there's somebody who cares about that.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of little things that people care about. Kinder Park. I mean, people come to the bookstore or they come to Black Rifle, and those are little communities of people that like that type of thing. And I think that's really neat to have a lot of those. And they're not nationalized. They're not large-scale things. And I think...
but Black Rifle is.
Well, it is now. Yeah, that's true. I know.
And there are other things, like, for example, Hamby's. Not the not the original, but the new one, right?
Yeah.
If we get stuck in the rut and we say, hey, you know, I can't live life without Bumdoodlers, and if Bumdoodlers ever closes, I'm going to lament Boerne gone forever, right? But we lose sight of the things that come into the community, the new things that become the eventual new siren, right?
Right. And so, I think that's great too. I love seeing new businesses pop up all the time. I really do. And so I think those are great. New ones always come along, and they become the unique little thing that Boerne has. And yes, the old ones die away, and maybe the noon siren will die away sometime. I don't know. But yeah, they come and go. But I think it's good to have those because they represent an expression of a part of our community.
And I agree with all of that. I only want to add that so long as they don't keep us from accepting the new things that are coming our way that will become the new things that we value.
That's a really good point, because someday Buc-ee's will be one of those things. Okay, maybe I shouldn't go that far.
Well,
but I think that's the point. I think you need to make a distinction when people say that's the way it was. Is it a keeping something here thing that's a unique expression of some part of the community, or is it a keep those things away attitude, which I think is what happened with the Buc-ee's thing,
right?
Which is we have never had Buc-ee's, so we don't want it. And so that's an exclusionary push rather than an inclusionary push. And I like the inclusionary pushes. But if we can distinguish those, I think we don't need to worry about keeping out the new things if we don't do exclusionary.
Yeah, unless
pushes.
it's the Barnes & Noble, then we can push that out.
Oh, yeah.
We don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Never.
We don't want that. Boerne Bookshop forever.
Yeah. Oh, no.
You can't die, Dale.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay, well, I'm going to bring out a book, and this is about personal time letting things go. It's called Unstuff Your Life, and it's called Kick the Clutter Habit and Completely Organize Your Life for Good by Andrew Mellon. And it's all about getting yourself organized and taking care of your routines so that you can get stuff done and you can move on. Talks a lot about different parts of your house. Probably a great book for kids just getting started and don't know how to keep a house. But we got it at the Boerne Bookshop.
All right.
And I think we're going to wrap it up there. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. And if you missed any of this, you can always go to BoerneRadio.com and listen to our podcast or any of the other shows.